We're going to start with the first ever alcoholic deputy of defense or secretary of defense, pardon me, and that is Pete Hegseth. As we know, Pete Hegseth very well may be the dumbest motherfucker in the Trump administration. This guy has not a single brain cell going on up there. This isn't even talking about his alleged sexual assault. This isn't having multiple kids with multiple different women, during which he cheated on one of his wives while fathering one of his other children. This, of course, does not even talk about his racism and his blatant Islamophobia. No, he is literally just a dumb person. He's a stupid man because there's no fucking way that an intelligent person makes the same mistake twice. George Bush said it best: fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. That still rings true to this day. So if you remember, a couple weeks ago, actually, we talked about the editor for The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, getting added to a Signal group chat wherein J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, Pete Hegseth, Michael Waltz were discussing details about an illegal strike that they were conducting on the Houthis in Yemen. This was a massive story for many reasons. The mainstream media covered it as like a national security breach, which I do understand, but to me it was a bigger story because these folks were blatantly just talking about war crimes in a manner in which you would not want to be visible to the public. Like, if you're trying to keep up this facade of seriousness, this facade of being worryful of, national security, you would be having these types of high intelligence discussions or these high level conversations in the appropriate spaces, in the sanctioned spaces that the government already has. Well, Pete Hegseth did that again, communicated illegal strike details with, I think, his brother-in-law and a couple other members of his family, one of whom is not even employed at the Department of Defense. This story is courtesy of The Guardian, titled "Full-Blown Meltdown at Pentagon After Hegseth's Second Signal Chat Revealed Existence of Group Chat Including Hegseth, His Wife, and Other Prompts Calls for Defense Secretary to Step Down." Pressure was mounting on the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Monday following reports of a second Signal chat room used to discuss sensitive military operations. While a former top Pentagon spokesperson slammed the U.S. top military officials' leadership of the Department of Defense. John Yolat, who resigned last week after initially serving as Pentagon spokesperson, said in an opinion essay published by Politico on Sunday that the Pentagon has been overwhelmed by staff drama and turnover in the initial months of the second Trump administration. Yolat called the situation, quote, "a full-blown meltdown that could cost Hegseth, a 44-year-old former Fox News host and National Guard officer, his job as defense secretary." Quote, "It's been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon, from leaks to sensitive operational plans to mass firings. The dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better from his senior leadership," Yolat wrote. See, I fundamentally disagree. This is exactly what Donald Trump deserves. You are the people who you keep. Donald Trump explicitly surrounded himself with yes people, with lackeys, with sycophants who have no other skill set than being able to slob on Trump's knob. That is what Pete Hegseth is at the Department of Defense to do. Trump knows that if push came to shove and there was, let's say, a protest that Trump didn't agree with, and he called on Pete Hegseth to deploy the National Guard to stop this protest, he knows that Pete Hegseth would do that. This incompetence is literally brought on by Donald Trump himself. If he were a serious president, he would have actually qualified people running this department, much like how he had in his first administration. Now, those people were also freakazoids, but they were at least high-ranking military members who had been through government, and they understand not only like the operational aspect of everything, but the managerial aspect of everything as well. When we call Pete Hegseth unqualified, it goes far beyond just him being a Fox News commentator and him just being like an officer in the military. He had never ran any type of organization with more than like a $10 million budget, I think it was. The Department of Defense is, I think, the largest government agency in terms of total workforce, and the second or third largest in terms of total budget. This is $1 trillion enterprise. The budget of the Department of Defense has a larger budget than the GDPs of nearly every other fucking country on the planet outside of obviously like the G7. This is a massive job with tremendous responsibilities. Pete Hegseth is thoroughly unfit to serve in this position. And this is even if he were sober, because we know that this dude is slamming back G&Ts with his feet up on the desk. Donald Trump Jr. pushed back on the opinion piece, saying the author is officially exiled from Trump's political movement. This guy is not America First, wrote coked out Don Jr. on X. I've been hearing for years that he works his ass off to subvert my father's agenda. That ends today. There we go. That they said the quiet part out loud. I don't even know if they like don't care about this anymore, but when you work within these government agencies, you are not supposed to act partisanly. I guess that's an adverb I just created. You are supposed to conduct your duties at the behest of the Constitution, at the American people, not at the behest of the political whims of whoever the president may be. Now, the president may try to bring in people who are more friendly with his agenda, but if these folks had any integrity, they would recognize that they are supposed to try to remain independent and unbiased. The warning came as the New York Times reported that Hegseth shared details of a U.S. attack on Yemeni Houthi rebels last month in a second Signal chat that he created himself, including his wife, his brother, and about a dozen other people. The Guardian has independently confirmed the existence of Hegseth's own private group chat. I wonder if who wrote this. I wonder if Edward Helmore was accidentally included in this group chat, much like Jeffrey Goldberg was. According to unnamed sources familiar with the chat who spoke to the Times, Hegseth sent the private group of his personal associates some of the same information, including the flight schedules for the FA-18 Hornets that would strike Houthi rebel targets in Yemen, that he also shared with another Signal group of top officials that was created by Mike Waltz, the national security advisor. The existence of the Signal group chat created by Waltz, in which detailed attack plans were divulged by Hegseth to other Trump administration officials on the private messaging app, were made public by The Atlantic magazine's Jeffrey Goldberg, who had accidentally been added to the group. The existence of a second Signal chat, coupled with Yolat's devastating portrait of the Pentagon under Hegseth, is likely to increase pressure on the White House to take action. I disagree. I don't think the White House gives a fuck about this. The White House has come out in the aftermath of this report backing Hegseth and refuting NPR's reporting that they're looking for a new Secretary of Defense, which we will talk about after this article. Donald Trump has shown a blatant disregard for public opinion in his second term. He is behaving in a manner that shows he only gives a fuck about how he and his immediate circle are impacted, which is weird considering how Trump in his first term was very much more narcissistic and very in tune with public opinion. He wasn't so brazen with many things, whereas this time he's saying whatever he wants, he's behaving however he wants, and part of that is him being unleashed. He's no longer shackled by people who have this facade of giving a shit about public perception, like Mike Pence, for example, who wouldn't certify the election in favor of Donald Trump. Trump defended Hegseth at the annual Easter egg roll event at the White House. Quote, "Pete's doing a great job. Just guess the Houthis how he's doing. It's just fake news. They bring up stories. It sounds like, what's the word? Disgruntled employees. You don't hear that word anymore, disgruntled, but I'm bringing it back. He was put there to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing. You don't always have friends when you do that." Hegseth himself blamed, quote, disgruntled former employees in remarks to reporters at the same event. What a big surprise that a few leakers get fired and suddenly a bunch of hit pieces come out from the same media that peddled the Russia hoax. This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Bro, if you Pete Hegseth are not worried about your reputation at this point, there's no saving you. Your own mother came out and said that you are a bad person. Your own mom has said that about you. You clearly do not give a fuck about your reputation if you have not changed your ways after being scolded by your own mother. He continued, "This is not going to work with me because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter." The Pentagon's chief spokesperson, Sean Parnell, issued a statement in a post on X on Sunday night following the Times report. I think that this quote from Hegseth was taken when he was at the White House's Easter event, standing in front of all of his children, and all of his children look visibly uncomfortable. Like, I know that, I don't know how old his children are. I think they're like 7, 8, 9, somewhere. They're young. And I know that, like, being out in a suit at the White House is not the most fucking enjoyable thing you want to be doing with your life. But they look so, they do not look like they're having a good time. And if my alcoholic father were putting on a show in front of me, I think I would be a little weirded out as well. Another day, another old story back from the dead. Parnell said the Trump-hating media continues to be obsessed with destroying anyone committed to President Trump's agenda. This time, the New York Times and all other fake news that repeat their garbage are enthusiastically taking the grievances of disgruntled former employees as the sole sources for this article. There was no classified information in any Signal chat, no matter how many ways they try to write the story. What is true is that the Office of the Secretary of Defense is continuing to become stronger and more efficient in executing President Trump's agenda. We've already achieved so much for the American warfighter, and we will never back down. That's interesting because there's been conflicting messaging from people in the Trump administration about if this information is technically classified or not. So they don't even know if it's classified. It's, spoiler alert, it is classified. It is supposed to be classified. I don't think that your war crimes are supposed to be discussed in an unsanctioned, unencrypted forum like Signal. Tammy Duckworth, a Democratic senator from Illinois and combat veteran, said in a statement that the second Signal chat put the lives of U.S. men and women in uniform at greater risk. How many times does Pete Hegseth need to leak classified intelligence before Donald Trump and Republicans understand that he isn't only a fucking liar, he's a threat to our national security? Every day he stays in his job is another day our troops' lives are endangered by his singular stupidity. He must resign in disgrace. Jack Reed, a Democratic senator from Rhode Island and senior member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said the report, if true, quote, is another troubling example of Secretary Hegseth's reckless disregard for the laws and protocols that every other military service member is required to follow. Reed called on Hegseth to immediately explain why he reportedly texted classified information that could endanger American service members' lives on a commercial app that included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer. Reed said he had, quote, warned that Mr. Hegseth lacks the experience, competence, and character to run the Department of Defense. In light of the ongoing chaos, dysfunction, and mass firings under Mr. Hegseth's leadership, it seems that those objections were well founded. Yolat warned that under Hegseth, the Pentagon focuses no longer on warfighting, but on endless drama, and said, quote, the president deserves better than the current Mishigas? What the fuck? Mishigas at the Pentagon. So now we're gonna shift gears onto further reporting from this, courtesy of NPR. White House is reportedly looking to replace Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. Official tells NPR. Now, in the aftermath of this, Caroline Leavitt came out and said, actually, no, we stand fully behind this alleged rapist and Islamophobic asshole because we love him. And we think that he's doing a great job with Trump's agenda, even though there are bottles of Tanqueray lining the shelves in his office. So let's go ahead. Let's take a listen to this.
Pete Hegseth publicly.
The Defense Department. In a moment, Democratic Senator Jack Reed calls for a wider investigation of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. First, we report on what the White House is doing.
One U.S. official tells NPR that the search is underway to replace Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Publicly, the president is standing behind him after a tumultuous week. Hegseth's office fired some of his aides. Then came revelations that the secretary shared details of impending airstrikes in Yemen again. NPR confirmed this second chat on the messaging app Signal, which included Hegseth's wife, his brother, and his personal lawyer. The first chat was with
Dude, he's doing this for fun. Straight up. He's just letting all of his homies know, hey, I'm doing war crimes. This is like opening up the fucking Slack channel. He should just open up the fucking Slack channel for all of the Department of Defense departments, all of the Department of Defense departments, and be like, hey, we're doing war crimes here, 3 o'clock, be there or be square. This is so funny considering that, just considering how there are regular ass jobs where people deal more secretly than Pete Hegseth does. Like if you work in a restaurant, the chef or the kitchen manager is not just going around and giving everybody the recipes to the menu. Like there aren't car companies giving away their blueprints. Like architects are not giving away their blueprints for free. It's just so funny that this guy is a fucking noodlehead. He's literally brain dead. Who's he gonna, like, what's he gonna do next? Is he gonna go to a parent-teacher conference and let the teacher know about these war crimes?
officials and a journalist who was inadvertently included.
NPR's Quill Lawrence is here to tell us more. Quill, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So we'll note that you're reporting this story with our colleague Tom Bowman. What are you guys hearing?
Yeah, a U.S. official told us that the search has begun after this second round of headlines about Hegseth. I should add that the White House has said our anonymous source doesn't know what they're talking about. But at a Rose Garden event yesterday, the president stood firmly by Hegseth, at least publicly.
No, he's doing a great job. It's just fake news. They just bring up stories. I guess it sounds like disgruntled employees. You know, he was put there to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing.
Quill, that phrase disgruntled employees. I think Hegseth used a similar phrase in his public remarks about this and referred to people who were fired in his office. What's he talking about?
Yeah, there were 4 senior advisors to Hegseth who left in just the past week. Former Defense Department spokesman John Elliott resigned last week and then published a quite extraordinary opinion piece calling the past month at the Pentagon a, quote, full-blown meltdown, and saying that this infighting is hurting President Trump. He served in Trump's first administration and appears to want to continue to serve. 3 other Pentagon advisors, Colin Carroll, Dan Caldwell, and Darren Selnick, were escorted out of the Pentagon and accused of leaking information to the press. They then put out, as a trio, the 3 of them put out a joint statement on X saying that their dismissal was unconscionable and that they haven't even been told what they stand accused of leaking. All 3 of them served in uniform. They say they understand the importance of information security. Caldwell and Selnick, notably, are longtime associates of Hegseth. They've worked with him over a decade, back to when he was at Concerned Veterans for America, a policy group.
So I'm trying to figure out what all of this adds up to. The White House does appear to be backing Hegseth, but he's been revealed. NPR has confirmed the original New York Times report that there was a second chat group on Signal where he was sharing information about an impending attack.
Yeah, I mean, with the first chat group, it was against Pentagon policy to use Signal for that. There were a lot of security issues with it, discussing details of an attack hours before the bombs hit in Yemen. But the people in that chat were the vice president, the secretary of state, people who would need to know. This second group, it appears that Hegseth was just cut and pasting this actionable intelligence about U.S. strikes to his wife. I can't think of any conceivable need they would have to know.
Hey, honey, how's work? It's great. I just drone strike this school in Yemen. Here, you want the coordinates and the flight time? This is so perfect for the Trump administration. I do want to interject one thing. In Trump's first term, he had like 5 secretaries of defense. So these folks, like this cabinet position already has a high turnover rate. But I suspect that the only way Pete Hegseth is removed or is forced to resign is if and when he turns on Donald Trump and acts out of line. I don't think that Trump gives a fuck about any of this. I think that Trump just likes that he has a Fox News guy in Washington D.C. with him who will literally do whatever the fuck he says. We know Donald Trump does not give a fuck about war crimes, about foreign policy. He just cares about vibes. That's it. The minute that Hegseth's vibes shift, he will be gone. And this goes back into, again, surrounding himself with more lackeys and sycophants. None of the people in his inner circle are going to push him to remove Pete Hegseth because he, Trump, has surrounded himself with yes people. No one is going to tell him no. I would be very surprised if there was an uproar in the Trump administration, and if there was negative backlash towards Pete Hegseth from people close to Donald Trump, I would be very surprised. And if that were to happen, my entire assessment of this administration would change. I would go from saying that he doesn't give a fuck about public opinion to entirely being wrong in that regard.
And military sources, veterans I talked to, are just outraged about this. They say that it really did put U.S. lives at risk and American security at risk. And they're concerned that this example being set, the military really drills into troops that they have to take responsibility for their actions, own up. And so far, Hegseth has not done that yet for either of these signal chats.
Yeah, and I guess we should emphasize Hegseth's side has insisted no classified information was shared, leaning on how they define classified information, but it was information about an impending attack, which is always considered sensitive. Quill, thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve.
Pete Hegseth spoke about those chats.
Even if classified or not, we're being fucking semantic. We're being pedantic in our attempts to describe the nature of these documents. Classified, secretive, whatever the fuck. The thing is, you should not be communicating these details in unsanctioned avenues if you actually give a fuck about national security. I personally don't give a shit. They could have this fucking conversation on Uvu. Bring it back. Resurrect Skype. Have it there. I don't give a fuck. I give a fuck more about the illegal nature of these attacks. I wish that the media focused on that part a little bit more as opposed to the national security part of it and how they broke the norms by doing this. They're doing crime, man. They're doing a war crime. The media should treat it as such. It's only fair. You can also bang on the national security ramifications of it as well. I mean, I did when we first talked about the original leak. Not that not that I'm again, not that I really give a fuck, but I mean, the government has the proper avenues to discuss these things. I think that if you're taking a job as a government official, you should do things in the way that they are prescribed to you. Much like you take any job, if there's a process for it, you should follow that process. You wanted this job. Pete Hegseth wanted to be Secretary of Defense. So yeah, we'll see what happens with this. I do think that Pete Hegseth is going to be safe for a little bit longer.